to Judy Cabin Brown, who is also a California director for the funds, a member of the Santa Cruz branch. Jane Niemeyer, our immediate past co-president from La Mesa El Cajon. Dawn Johnson, who's on the communications committee and is our governance chair as well as parliamentarian. She wears lots of hats. Rolly Wendorf is our California CFO. You'll be hearing from her toward the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So we're talking about non-contact fundraising because we know that in this pandemic, you can't talk to people one-on-one in person. And to remember that 80% of your funds really come from about 20% of your donors. So we're looking at ways to not only get you those funds from your 20% of your donors, but also how to increase your potential out in the community. And in order to do that, we come up with some fun ways to do this so that your budgets, which are stressed all over the place, will maybe provide a fun and valuable, therefore, tool to help people raise funds in your branches. So next slide, please. So, you know, we have to think, as we said, in other ways, thinking outside the box. No more bake sales. Next slide, please. You know, the new normal means new ideas. So we can't do home tours. We can't have luncheons. We have to brainstorm in some creative way. And we know that all of these other ideas were a lot of work. Hopefully some of these are new ideas to you and will invigorate your branch to bring in new members who might be more excited by the creativity of some of these new ideas. Next slide, please. So what could the new fundraising be? And we have listed a whole bunch of things that we're going to go through. I'm not going to name all of them. You can see them on your screen. And as we go through the webinar, you'll have them explained to you. And one of the other things that we do want to point out is that there is some possibility to reach out to the community via grants and to expand your branch fundraising to others that are not necessarily members, but are part of the community that might work into being willing to be involved in some of these fun ideas. And we're also going to have our CFO talk about what are the appropriate ways to do fundraising and be legally and fiscally appropriate. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn this over to Jane Niemeyer, who's going to talk to you about the Not So Silent auction.
I have to give credit first to Susan Negretti, who came up with this idea, but she had a family emergency, so I am stepping in for her. She always has wonderful ideas. So we've all had silent auctions at our luncheons, and we've gone around the room and signed up for things. So this is a not so silent auction. It's a fun and creative way to have your auction and save money. And Susan suggests that you only pick 5 or 6 things that you can highlight. And you get your members to highlight all these things in various ways. You can design a show. You can make it silly and fun and be very creative. So next slide, please. What I was thinking in my La Mesa El Cajon branch, we have women in history. And these women are used to performing at the schools. So I thought these women would be perfect. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you had Eleanor Roosevelt selling something to you, or Alice Paul, or one time we had Annie Oakley for a while. She would be a great salesperson. But for example, Susan said at her branch in Torrance, they had, lucky them, somebody had a condo in Hawaii that they put up every year for a bid. And so you would spend time showing the condo photos, maybe saying how many people would be sleeping in the condo, what it's worth, and what are some of the things that they can do while they are in Hawaii. So that's one idea, the women in history, but you could do other things. Have a theme. I was thinking fun would be dress up like hippies, you know, get out all your beads and headbands and bell bottoms and do anything to entertain people while you're trying to sell things. Always rehearse. And another important thing is bidding. You should have on your bid sheets what the item is, a description, what it's worth, minimum bid, and the increments that it should go up. Because I was at a silent auction for the jazz station where I volunteer, and they had this wonderful prize, which was a play, 2 tickets to a play, and then afterwards you could have a dance lesson with the choreographer, and it was worth $300. So I went over there, and somebody had put $7 and somebody else 10. So I went and put 100. So you always please put your minimum bid. And you could also do baskets. We always have baskets, but really good baskets, and put a lot of things in there, like a movie basket. Typical bid sheet, I talked about that. There are links, and I'm not sure if Tracy has those for us. She mentioned to me, I think they'll be in the materials, there are places where you can do online bidding, not just the kind that I'm used to that I was talking about, that you can update. You can do this in the chat room, and you could also have an auctioneer getting people's bids and getting people excited about it and say, oh, come on, we can spend more money on that. Or you could do it as an email and maybe give a few days or a week and email back and forth and try to build excitement that way. And send updates on your bidding. And you can also, of course, make up your own ideas, but think it through and be sure to announce the winners and how much you've raised. Okay, next, please. The tea party, we've all done that, but let's try to put a little twist on it this time and make it a little more exciting. Next slide, please. I was thinking that maybe you could have a theme for your tea party, like a suffragist tea party. And you could have on your sheet suggested bids to honor Susan B. Anthony. Please send $100. To honor Alice Paul, $75. To honor another suffragist, one of my favorites, Victoria Woodhull, maybe, $50. So set your levels. And of course, you can always have other on your donation sheet. Or you can pick Alice in Wonderland or some fictional characters that you can set your levels from. Alice, the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, fun things like that. So you send out your tea bag, your donation form to your members, and maybe a stamped and addressed return envelope. You might get pretty good response. All right, next, please. And this idea came from Carol Holtzgraf, who is also a California director. Build a Tech Trek girl. Next slide, please. How are you going to build a Tech Trek girl? Well, you will fund a camper ship, and you're going to have members purchase body parts. An arm or a leg could be, look at this, magic, $100 each. The trunk or the head, $300 each. And then you'll have, oops, she's missing a leg. We better give another 100. And I was thinking also to add to this Tech Trek girl, you could maybe raise another 100 by naming her. I would name mine after one of my grandmothers, I think. We always have extra expenses for Tech Trek. So this is a good way, but you could also involve the community to come in, or excuse me, local businesses. They could even band together and sponsor a Tech Trek girl. Or in the La Mesa El Cajon branch, one time the book club I participate in decided to, not this fun way, but we all took up a collection and we sponsored a Tech Trek girl because we were low on funds that year. So that is another idea for you. Oh yes, this is very important, and Rolly will talk more about it, but all these donations are tax deductible for Tech Trek, and that's how you should make out your checks. And now I think we're going to meet some flamingos with Sharon.
Next slide, please. So this is an unusual way to raise funds because you will be flocking for them. Notice the flock of flamingos on the lawn. Next slide, please. What's a flamingo flocking? Well, your branch can either purchase, or if you know somebody who has a set of these flamingos, this is what you do. The next thing you do is you can charge a fee and have the flamingos placed on a recipient's lawn. This is done overnight to surprise somebody. And so it could be a fun thing to do to honor somebody for their birthday or a special anniversary, a graduation, because they show up on the lawn overnight. And of course, you include a sign explaining what this is. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. One of the things you need to do is suggested by many who'd use this as a fundraiser is to contact the police department to make sure that it's okay to do this. But the very clever way that you let people know what this is you have a sign that's put in place along with your flock of flamingos, and the sign reads, "You have been flocked by," and then the person who has paid for the flocks to be in place will have their name there, and the AAUW logo, of course, letting everybody know that AAUW is the supporting organization. I would also recommend that for anyone who's doing this, that you maybe email your friend to say, look outside, or somehow let them know that you have honored them by having this flock put in place. Next slide, please. And now Judy Cavan Brown is going to talk about this slide.
Well, as you all know, because we've all been stuck at home, that for probably half of 2020 or more, we have been sheltering in place. I imagine that, like me, you have spent considerably less money on things like transportation costs, entertainment, eating out, and the like. More specifically, you haven't been spending money on AAUW events. Why not organize a fund drive around the concept of contributing from that savings? This could be an organized group effort, or it could be encouraged on an individual basis. You could even link this idea with one of the other ideas that's being presented in the webinar this evening. However you go about it, consider sharing your savings.
The next presenter is Dawn Johnson.
And ready to go. So I'm going to talk about the next 5 possible things that you might do for some fundraising that doesn't involve contact. And the best part is that not all of them require Zoom, And some of them will allow your members to do what most of them really want to do in the first place, usually, is just write a check. So the first one I want to talk about is, I know that your members have probably been doing the same thing that I've been doing, which is whiling away the hours, crossing off all the vacations that you had scheduled for this year on your calendars. No to Bali, no to Rome, no to Paris. And you've gotten all the way down to crossing out a B&B weekend in Bakersfield, and even that you're mourning. So I think what could be exciting for your members to cheer them up after the loss of their vacations is to plan a virtual trip for them as a fundraiser. So what you would do in a virtual trip is you pick an exotic destination, because yes, this is a Zoom exercise, so you can take them anywhere. And you will allow your travelers, your members, to purchase airline tickets to go on this virtual trip. And you can have your airline tickets tiered. So you charge X amount for first class and a certain amount for economy and business and economy plus and business plus and whatever all of those are. And you can charge them different amounts for those. And then what you will do, and this is the part where your members can get really creative, is you'll ask some of your members to actually do a presentation maybe once a week about the exotic destination that you've chosen. And that would be done by Zoom. So the people who have purchased tickets to go on your trip can join you once a week or so, and you'll have your tour guide who will present some information about maybe the destination's history or its culture or some of the awesome things that you can do there. They can show pictures of the scenery, and then they can get really creative and maybe teach the group some of the dances if they're really good at it. If they want to play some music from the country, if they want to demonstrate a cooking class, you know, they could actually teach people how to do crêpe Suzette if you took a trip to France. They could teach them a song. There are all sorts of things that your people could do to make this an enjoyable experience for the members. And you can tier that, if you really want to the price of the ticket that they purchase. So the first class people might be able to zoom in on 5 or 6 of these really fun, creative presentations. And maybe your economy people only get to go to 3 or 4 of them. So you can kind of push them up a little bit that way. It's a fun way to start this too, would be to have all of your tour guide, all your tour group assemble at the very first Zoom meeting and come with a little suitcase that they would show, open it up and show the 2 things that they never travel without and share what those are, just to break the ice with the group. You can also, through the course of your trip, add on some little add-on charges. So as they're, quote, flying on the first day, and if they want to buy a cocktail, you know, you might charge them a few bucks for that. And when they arrive, if you want to have pictures of the hotel there and you could upgrade them to a suite, you could charge more for that. So there's a bit of, you know, handling of the record keeping, but it's an extremely great opportunity to get creative and let your members get creative and ask them to participate in helping raise the funds and engaging them by asking them to come up with a short presentation that would make it fun. So that's the virtual trip. Next slide, please. So this idea is called, I'm calling it the Amazon Smile Maybe. Not because it's not worth smiling about, but because your branch can only participate if it's a bona fide charity or it has an entity that's a bona fide charity, like a scholarship account or something. If you haven't heard of this, Amazon runs a program to make donations to bona fide charities, and it parcels off a certain amount of the shopper's money and donates it back to that charity. So it's quite simple to do. You register your branch as a charity with Amazon Smile, which is online, Amazon Smile. And then you just tell your members and their friends and everybody else to stretch this out into the community too, to sign up for Amazon Smile, which you can do on the website there, and pick your branch for their donation, because you will have registered it. So what they do is they do their shopping on Amazon Smile website. It's exactly the same as the regular Amazon website. So you can get all the same stuff, excuse me. Sorry, my phone rang. You can get all the same stuff. You know, if you wanted to get that electric lemon squeezer or whatever we're buying from Amazon these days, you can get that right through Amazon Smile. But the difference is that you've logged into Amazon Smile instead of your normal account. And what they will do is donate 0.5% of all the eligible purchases, which are many. There's certainly some ineligible purchases, but 0.5% goes to your branch because you're the designated charity. So during this COVID time, people are shopping with abandon, as you know. A lot of shopping is going on. So why not get a little bit of benefit from it with no work on your part and an opportunity for a lot of other people to contribute to your branch just by shopping? I mean, that's pretty easy. So that's the Amazon Smile. Next, please. Trick or treat, give me something good to eat. This is definitely a one-day fundraising idea. And luckily for you, the day has already been selected, so you don't need to check all your calendars. This obviously takes place on Halloween Day. And Halloween Day is coming up quickly, so you need to do a little planning ahead of time if you'd like to do this, but it's quite fun. So what you do is your board members will dress up in costumes, and they will go out and visit the members' homes and to trick or treat. And they ask the member can ask them to do a trick. So the member might say, or the donor might say, oh, you know, sing a song, dance a jig, recite the alphabet, tell me the names of all of your teachers since grade school, you know, do the hokey pokey, read me a poem, any trick that you can think of. And if the board member does it, then the member makes a donation, and you would have a suggested amount for that. So you would do a survey of your members first, asking if they'd like to have you visit them on Halloween, just for the fun of it, and for the fun of making your board members do something incredibly goofy. And then you would maybe make a suggested amount to them of how much the donation could be for this goofy thing that the board member is going to do, and they should have a check ready. But naturally, it could be any amount they want. And on that form that you send in, ask the survey, you're really asking them if they'd like to opt in. You're just saying, can we visit your home? It would be really fun. And then you also, so if they say no or they don't answer, then of course you don't go to their home. And on that form, you always include an opportunity to send a check instead. So, you know, if you don't, you know, we know you don't want us to visit you. So how about sending us $50? This is again is a one-dayer, and in COVID times, this would have to be done carefully. You would be masked, socially distant from your neighbors, from your donor's front door, and you could even do this as a drive-by. So that's a trick or treat, and you don't have too much time to plan it, but it might be kind of fun. Next. So this is having a grown-up spelling bee or a trivia contest, and this is unfortunately is a kind of a Zoom event. But what you can do is get your branch members or members of another organization or friends and family or whatever, pay a fee to form a team. So maybe you're it's $100 a team, maybe, which means maybe a team's of 4. So you're only asking the member to donate maybe $25 or something to be on this team. And then you can run either a spelling bee or a trivia contest. It's quite easy to do it on Zoom, but you would need to think it through a little bit carefully and plan ahead a little bit carefully about how you would manage it. You know, you want to make sure that you ask a question of one person on the team, and then you could have to decide if you're going to allow them to confer with their teammates in a Zoom breakout session, or whether you are just going to make them answer on the spot. And if they get it right, the team gets points. If they get it wrong, you know, the team loses points, which is the easiest way to do it. You can do that with trivia. You could do it with a spelling bee. And if they get something wrong, then you give them the opportunity to buy back in with another donation so that they're supporting their team. So if they do the wrong answer in trivia and the rest of the team is not lost points, and next round they want to get back in, then they can pay a little fee to get back in. So it's not a big money maker, but if you think about it, if you got $100, dollars a team, and you ran a couple sessions and you had 10 teams all together, maybe split over 2 days or something, you're looking at $1,000. So that isn't so bad. And the questions you can pull just from any trivia website anywhere, and same with spelling words. How do you do prizes? Well, you could, one of my suggestions was nothing but glory, but the other one is, maybe your members could get engaged by delivering some homemade desserts or something to the winners. Next, please. So this is the last one that I'm going to talk about. You'll be rid of me. This is the best one for the people who just want to write a check. And we've all been there. We're doing the book sales, and we're lugging the boxes of books and carrying them from the car to the multi-purpose room and unloading them, and then getting the snacks and the decorations and all that for the book sale. And there's always somebody who's like, oh my God, can I just write a check? So here's a way you can just write a check. This is a non-event event. So people simply donate to not do something, such as a non-marathon. So you send out the notices that you're going to be having a marathon, and you may pay to not participate because it's actually not happening. People are willing to give to the organization, but sometimes they like to do it in what feels like a more fun way and a more engaging way. Even though at the bottom line is we're asking them for their check, we have our handout, but they like to feel as though it was an interesting event. So this makes it a little bit fun. You can dress this up as much as you want in making a whole rah-rah thing about the marathon, but you can tier the donation. You can say, pay us $30 to not run 30 miles and $20 to not run 20 miles and that sort of thing. It's helpful to give people suggestions of donation amounts. And then you can do some tack-ons, like you can say, you can charge them, $15 or $20 to not buy running shoes, or to not have to buy one of those $25 Yeti water bottles, or most importantly, the last one, open amount to not be being seen in exercise clothes. How much will they pay for that? So they'll get this announcement, this notice in the mail. You can do some rah-rah around it with your usual internal promotional and excitement generating devices. And then you can get them to get kind of pumped about it. And, hopefully some donations will come in. You can have some way to have a winner at the end, which may be related to how much they give, or who gives first, or something like that. So you can have a race finish for the non-race. And so there's a lot of ways you can twist this and have some fun with it. And again, this is completely non-contact and not Zoomable, and just allows people to do what they really want to do, which is just to support the organization, but in a little bit fun way. So I'm going to hand this off now back to Sharon.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of things. Some of them have to be done on Zoom. Some of them can be done differently, and can even be having people that are not members participate. Frankly, the only way I would ever run a marathon is by being in a non-event and paying the check. So I want you all to think about the fact that there might be some nonprofits in your area that are required by their nonprofit charter to dispense their funds, their net profits. My branch has raised thousands of dollars over the years for Tech Trek by completing an online application from a Tech Trek, from a thrift shop nonprofit. And we have gotten funds from them for multiple years. If you're lucky enough to have some organization in your community, oftentimes there are golf tournaments where they dispense funds. I'm giving you information on GuideStar, which is an online website where you can find out about various grant makers that offer funding to nonprofits. And Usually the applications for these are online. Another thing that you can do, can I have the next slide, please, is continue to think about who you can honor by flocking. It's fun to get a sign in your front yard saying you've been flocked by someone. So therefore, just because someone is not a member doesn't mean that they can't be a participant and pay the fee to a friend, to honor a friend to be flocked. And in addition, someone could do the not silent auction funding from out of the membership, or someone could offer to help build a tech check girl, especially if they choose to put that information in correctly so that it becomes tax deductible. So all of these things can be done on a non-contact basis. They could be getting funding from outside of the membership, because we don't want to always hit up the members for their funds. And if I could have the next slide, please. We're going to now talk about the fundraising guidelines, and I'm going to turn this over to Rolly Wendorf, our CFO.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. So we're going to be switching gears now. So we look at the financial aspects of fundraising for the next several minutes. There are various rules and laws associated with fundraising. So the first of these is that fundraising must be for AAUW. It can be for national programs, it can be for branch programs, but it must not be for other organizations. So nonprofit organizations are allowed to raise funds, in order to support their own causes. However, we do not expect that other organizations are going to raise funds for us. And also, we don't raise funds for other organizations. So for instance, if somebody thinks very highly of some charity that's supporting wonderful work for women in Africa, then any member is welcome to contribute to that as an individual, but it's not reasonable that at an AUW branch meeting or a state event or other branch event, you ask for funds to be donated to this other cause. So AUW only. Then the next thing is there is a donor bill of rights. So if you go to the on the website at the link provided below at our California website and on the fundraising page, there is a one-pager on the donor bill of rights. So there's like 10 points in it. But really, the long and short of it is that basically donors have a right to expect that their donations will be used in accordance with their wishes. And so what that means is that there are two aspects to it. One is at fundraising events to make it very clear what the purpose of that fundraising is. So it should be specified. If it is just for Tech Track, then say that. If the funds are going to be used, like some for national programs and some for the branches programs, then say that. But basically, one needs to have signage, one needs to have all the publicity material must point out what the purpose of the fundraising is, and also whether the donations will be tax deductible or not. The second aspect of it is that once the funds have been raised, then it is important that those funds are used for those purposes. Like I said, that funds would be used for Tech Track, then those funds must be used just for that purpose. So there has to be a consistency between the purpose and its usage. If we don't follow that, then what happens is AAUW loses the trust of the donors, because you're raising funds for something and using it for something else, and then next time they may feel that they don't want to donate to AAUW. So these points that I'm making here are from this Policy 501, which is from AUW National, and it is also available on our website. So I would recommend that you go through it. Next slide, please. Okay, then there is the issue of fiscal integrity in fundraising. So there are a bunch of IRS regulations, there are a bunch of California state regulations, many rules which have to be followed for fundraising. So you need to be aware of all these rules and follow these rules. So, in coming slides, I'll go over some of the different kinds of fundraising and what kinds of rules are associated with that. The next thing is using good accounting practices. And by this, I mean that you have to, again, it's a matter of making it very clear that the intent of the donors is being followed. So for instance, you've raised a bunch of funds, and then maybe they've all gone towards one project, maybe they've been divided up among a number of projects. But when that has been done, the accounting for it, like it's a good idea, for instance, to have a separate spreadsheet for each of the projects. It's not always necessary that you create a separate checking account for every single project you have. I mean, it may be that you have some really large project and you find it more convenient for it to have its own checking account. But the point is that logically there has to be a separation. In the accounting itself, you have to say what are the funds which are associated with which particular project. So for instance, like say you've raised funds for STEM, and then at the end of the year, you have some money left over. Well, you have to then next year use it for STEM. So it has to be accounted, it has to be kept separate. You can't just mix it up with your operating funds, and then now you've lost track of what was the money that was raised from fundraising and needed to be spent only on STEM. And it may end up, once mixed with the operating funds, it could get spent on something completely different. So that kind of care is needed in the accounting. It's also important to maintain transparency. So for instance, like say, if you're raising money for scholarships, then it is important that there is a transparent way of selecting scholarship winners. The donors need to be sure it's not going to just support somebody's, a member's grandchild, for instance. It has to, what is the selection criteria, all that needs to be set out. One way can be that, instead of members choosing the winner, you have, say for instance, if you're giving a scholarship, if you always choose your winners from, say, your local community college, then maybe you could let the faculty of that community college choose the winners instead of having branch members choose the winners. But the main point is the transparency. And then finally, again, just making sure that when fundraising, the signs and flyers and promotional materials all specify the purpose for which this is going to be done. I think we went over that a little bit in the previous slide as well. Next slide, please. Okay, tax deductible or not. So donors are really interested when they give money. They want to know if they can deduct those donations from their taxes. And it's important to know that not all donations are deductible. So we will go through several examples. But first of all, a little like in the AAUW world, there are two kinds of entities. You're either a 501c4, which is a social welfare organization, or you're a 501c3, which is a charity. And so when it comes to donations, these two types of entities have different rules. A C4 organization is not like you cannot deduct your donations from taxes when donating to a C4. However, when you're donating to a C3, you can. So from the fundraising point of view, that is the big difference between these two organizations. And so for instance, if we look at, National AAUW is a C3 organization, except for the Action Fund, which is C4. So all donations made to AAUW funds are tax deductible. Also, $56 out of the $59 of your membership dues are tax deductible. However, $3 of the membership goes to Action Fund, and since Action Fund is C4, that's not tax deductible. So you deduct 56 out of 59. Now, as far as California state is concerned, we are a C4 entity, but we have a fiduciary pass-through with the Special Projects Fund. So your membership dues go to AUW California, it's C4, so those are not tax deductible. However, if you write a tech track donation to AUW CASPF, then that is tax deductible. Then if we look at branches, now many branches are just 501c4, in which case branch membership dues are not tax deductible. Donations made to branches are not tax deductible. Some branches have a C3 fiduciary associated with it, and so then donations made to that are tax deductible. And then again, if you look at like some branches are C3, and then they can accept tax deductible donations. Some branches, to run their scholarship programs, they work with foundations, which are tax deductible, and then donations made to that foundation are tax deductible. So it's a complicated story depending on whether the entity to which you're donating is C3 or C4. Now, how to make a donation? Well, the simplest way of making a donation is to write a check directly to the C3 entity. So if you write a check to AUW funds, you can deduct it from your taxes. If you write a check to AAUW CASPF, you can deduct it from your taxes. So for that reason, what some branches do is that for their scholarships or for their mission-based projects, they set up a project in SPF so that the funding, so that donations are made to SPF, and then you ask SPF to spend, when it comes time to spend that money, you ask SPF to spend it on behalf of that project. There's another a common way in which branches raise funds, and this is by having an event. And of course, even if it is a Zoom event or a virtual event, still, it depends on whether some goods and services, something is being provided. I mean, after all, you could if you have an auction, there is something which they're getting for it. If there is, you may be sending something by mail to someone. So there still is an opportunity for goods to be transferred as a result of the donation. So getting back to like when there is a branch event for fundraising, then one way of, there have been expenses, the branch has had expenses. One way of doing it is you take all the money that's been collected, pay for all the expenses, and then whatever is left over is what the branch has made, and then the donation can be done from the branch. So much to AUW funds, so much to SPF for Tech Trek or whatever. Well, this is the most convenient way of doing it. However, when you do it this way, then the donors or those who attended that fundraising event are not able to deduct from their taxes. Now, another way of doing it, especially when donating to national, that you could just write a check to national for the amount, for the amount which doesn't, not involved in the expense part of it. So there is a certain value of goods and services. You take the money that was given by a person, subtract any goods or services that they got for it, and then what's left over, that can be a tax deductible donation. It gets even more tricky when you cannot use exactly the same thing when donating to SPF, and there's a difference between the two, because branches are entities of national but not entities of SPF. So there are good documents on the website, so take a look at those. This is as much as I'll say about this here. Now, this is more for 501c3 branches, but when you're accepting donations, you need to provide a receipt for donations of $250 or more. This can be in the form of a nice thank you letter to the donors. Next slide, please. Okay. And so more IRS and California state rules for a variety of situations. So a lot of, one way one could raise funds, of course, is by selling items. You sell a t-shirt, sell some jewelry, have an auction, which is also something which is given away. There are different, it raises the issue of sales tax. And for different kinds of nonprofits, there are different rules, who has to pay sales tax, who doesn't. But as far as AAUW is concerned, AAUW branches as well as state, when we sell things, we are required to pay sales tax. So what that means is that before the sales event can happen, it's important to get a seller's permit. So you have to go to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, their website, which is cdtfa.ca.gov. And you have to apply for a seller's permit at least 60 days before the sales event. So let me see, I've lost my place here. Once the sales event is over, then paperwork has to be filed. There are two kinds of seller's permits. That's what I forgot to say. that one is a temporary permit and one is a regular permit. So if for your branch, you're selling something as a one-off thing, not likely to do it again, then a temporary permit is sufficient. But if it is part of your fundraising to have some sales event every year, then it's a good idea to just get the regular permit. Another way that funds are raised. Oh yeah, let me make one more point, sorry about that. It's, you know, what do you pay sales tax on? If you have a book which is worth $10 and somebody donated gave $40 for that book, then $10 is the price of the book and you pay sales tax on the $10, and then $30 was just the donation. But however, like auctions work a bit differently. Whatever price was finally paid, the sales tax has to be paid on that full amount. Raffles. That's a very common way, or used to be a very common way of raising money, but that's a little complicated in California as well. So it used to be people, did 50-50 raffles, but those are illegal. The expense associated with a raffle, and that includes the winnings. So the total expenses have to be less than 10% or less of the value of the amount that has been raised. And then once the raffle is over, there is paperwork that has to be filed to indicate, which has questions like what was the amount raised and what were the expenses, to show that the expenses were 10% or less. So one has to be careful with that. Then events with ticket sales, we mentioned a little bit the idea of the fair value of the goods and services provided. So for instance, if you have paid, say, $25 for a lunch, which costs only $15, then the $10 will be considered the donation. And so if that money has been paid to a 501c3 organization, to a charity, then that's the amount you can deduct from your taxes. Getting into auctions, auction is also like, it depends on what's being auctioned, but if there is an item, I think it does not apply to auctioning a ticket or renting a house. I think Don somebody was talking about renting a house in Hawaii, but anyway, it doesn't apply, the tax doesn't apply to that. But otherwise you need an idea of you have to have an idea of the value of the item which is being auctioned. And then the part which would be considered tax deductible is the amount paid above the value of the item. And it doesn't matter if the item was donated, this still applies. Next slide, please. Okay, then just a couple of miscellaneous issues. Should an IBC hold a fundraising event? And IBCs are a little complicated because they're not considered an affiliate of AAUW. So it's not, an IBC is not the same as a branch. A branch has affiliate status. So for instance, when you're filing your taxes, you can go to the member services database and put in for your federal taxes that way. An IBC cannot do that. So basically, IBC does not have any nonprofit status from AAUW. And so IBCs cannot raise funds. It's better that you do it through one of the branches of the IBC when you're trying to raise funds for the IBC. Last point I'm going to make this evening is that collaborating with other like-minded organizations is allowed. So for instance, you can have, for instance, if you're collaborating with the League of Women Voters to organize an event which allows high school girls to learn more about standing for elections, say for instance, then it's okay. You can collaborate. You can have, you can raise funds together for an event like that. Support it. So I think I've covered a lot of ground, and I'm going to stop here. So get creative, have lots of fun, and we'll take questions now.
So Raleigh, your section generated quite a few questions, as you can imagine. Money is always the hot topic. And I believe that Tracy's going to be bringing forward some of those questions for you to consider.
Yes, one question that was asked is, can funds be raised for general operating expenses?
Okay, Sandy, could we just go to the screen with everybody, all the panelists, just in case some of them want to fill in some answers too? Okay, Tracy, could you repeat that question, please?
Okay. Can funds be raised for general operating expenses?
Can funds be raised?
Raleigh, I'm
I mean,
sure that can be done. It's just they're not deductible.
Yeah, theoretically they can be raised. But I mean, usually branches are able to cover their operating expenses from the membership dues. And then it's usually for the projects that they're raising funds.
Okay. What's the AUW Action Fund? What's the difference between that and the AUW Fund?
Should I take that, or do
you know what? I just looked that up on the national website to make sure that I was telling you the right thing. The AUW Action Fund actually deals with voting and elections and policy issues. So that's not specifically a charity. It's a policy related fund, and therefore it is not tax deductible. That's the one part where we have what we call an advocate, both in Sacramento and in Washington. And that advocate is really a lobbyist. So that's part of what that gets to do. So that's why it's different than the AAUW funds, which are all 501c3 under the 501c3 umbrella of national. Does that explain it?
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And let me just add a little bit to that basically AAUW is like, we are nonpartisan, but we are political. So we do lobby for our causes. And even though we do not support as AAUW, political parties or candidates. So in order to lobby, you cannot do political activity with AC3. And so for that reason, Action Fund is at national level is C4. And in California, our whole AUW California is C4, only the Special Projects Fund is C3.
Okay, great. Okay, many donations are electronic these days. Are there details to be aware of in that case? Certainly for all our Zoom events, payment will be expedited by online payment.
Yeah, no, I think it doesn't matter as long as you have an ability to make online payments. So for instance, like say any donations you make to National, you go on National's website and you can donate and you can deduct taxes. So tax deductibility doesn't have to do with whether you're writing a check or whether you're making online payment, but there has to be an ability to make online payment. So if you, so for instance, if you're doing any of those fundraising activities, you could create a way on your branch website to accept electronic payments. And a good way of doing that is with PayPal. So you have a, if the branch has a PayPal account, and then you can just set up a form and an ability to make PayPal payments through the website. And then that way you can pay either directly through PayPal or put in a credit card. And that works really well.
Okay, and do you have any, it wasn't part of this, but I'm wondering if she also was talking about record keeping in this case. So you don't have a physical check, but you have an electronic payment. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, record keeping is, no, it still is, you know, your money is getting collected in PayPal, and you have to do the same record keeping. The only thing is that one must remember that PayPal charges a fee. And so there is that amount of the donation that is going to PayPal, and then the rest is the donation.
Okay, thank you. If people donate items to sell, do we still have to pay sales tax?
When you donate items, you mean for the for an auction, for instance?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's the question, yes.
Yes, because the person, see, sales tax has to do with the value that the person is receiving, right? And they're getting something of some value. And so it doesn't matter if it has been donated. There is, but it is not like the value is not the same as the new items would be if it is not a new item.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds good.
Tracy, I could mention also that there is a website that's available called It's Deductible, and that will give you what a value of something that is used might be as an IRS acceptable amount for the donation if it's a used item.
Okay, great. All right, this is a question regarding virtual travel. Maybe you, Dawn, can answer this one, or possibly Sandy. Could we show YouTube movies of the actual country, and would permission be required?
Well, I think I saw Sandy's answer to that. She's our tech guru. She said that YouTube videos are public domain and there shouldn't be any problem using them, and that's a great idea. I'd mix it up a lot and do some other things as well, but that's a good idea. Maybe Sandy has anything to add to that?
No, that's correct. They are public. If you put something on YouTube and you keep it private, then you can't, nobody else can see it. So if it's in the public domain, it's okay. All right.
Okay.
I think that's the
I had
end
an
of
actual, one of them was a suggestion. I just wanted to bring it up here. It said by PJ Misson. She said you could do a scavenger hunt in your homes, like the trivia or the spelling bee. So that's another thing you can do via Zoom, and ask people to find things in their home.
I had neglected to mention also that there was an organization that I found out about who did the flocking, and they indicated that they raised $5,000 by having flocks of flamingos fly around their town. So just an FYI.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I saw a couple of suggestions in the Q&As that I just like to bring forward in case other people are not following the Q&A, some of our participants, our guests. One of them suggestion was regarding the tech truck girl that Jane talked about, and someone said you could sell a mask as well. So I thought that was kind of cute. The scavenger hunt idea is actually one that I thought of, and I sort of forgot to build it. So I appreciated that suggestion to do, you would basically sell, have people buy a list of things that they have to find, and you could award points for how many they found, but keeping it within the home is a really good response to, you know, what may be possibly another, who knows, shelter in place time we'll be looking at. The other thing you could do with that was a scavenger hunt, is a research scavenger hunt where they can find things online to answer questions and so on. So they're still staying within the home. And the other thing a couple of things I wanted to mention is that somebody made some great suggestions regarding the auction, the things that you could sell in the auction. It was brought up in the Q&A that some of the things we mentioned were not really things that people could take advantage of now because they were involved contact. And so people have been throwing out some great suggestions that you could sell tickets to online events, online shows and plays that still do charge a fee. That you could sell a service. Your members could sell services such as, doing some artistic work or calligraphy or some baking or something like that. You could sell things that can be shown. If you can sell an item on these online auctions, it is something you can hold up and show, and do a dance about and sing and sing and dance about and really pitch like a salesman. And that could be anything. That can be a beautiful vase, a handmade jewelry, some really great electronic whatchamajigger that you just have to have these days. And so there's a lot of things that could be sold online by just showing the item as well. And some of those were mentioned. Let me see, any other notes? I just wanted to add those that came up from our participants, some great ideas to add to what we were talking about.
Well, thank you, Dawn. And I want to just take a moment and share with you our upcoming events. So let's see if I can get the right screen up here. So we have some webinars that are upcoming. They're the next 3 on October 1st. I'll be teaching a class on how to set up your Tech Trek competition on Zoom. So since we are not able to have a live audience, I guess you could do it in an outdoor arena or something, but if you're going to do it virtually, there are some tips that we'll bring up about how to do that on Zoom. On the 10th, we have our first fund luncheon, and it gives you an opportunity to meet the California Fellows and Grants recipients. Each of the funds luncheon, there's another one on the 24th, have different speakers at them. So you're no longer limited by travel and having to choose between going to Northern California or a Southern California event. You can see all of them on either of those 2 days. And then on the 12th of October, we're going to be working with an organization, the AAW organization out of Pennsylvania, who is going to talk with us about increasing gender diversity on the board of nonprofit organizations. So that really fits into our discussion about diversity within our organization, and you might be able to get some tips from that webinar. So before we leave, I want to thank our presenters and also those folks who are behind the screen who you can't see. So Tracy Clark, Nancy Turner, Linda Slater from the communications team, who made sure that all the technology worked in the background, and got your questions all assembled, as well as our wonderful presenters, Raleigh, Sharon, Judy, Jane, and Dawn. Thank you very much. And so we're going to close the session now, and if our presenters will stay online, we will have a brief discussion. Thanks, everybody.